what are the few things that stand out most for you of an integral nature? In other words, as you think across all of the things that you've heard, all of the different speakers, what are the takeaways that you feel are the aspects that you would want to share with others? Let's say you go home or you go back to your place of work, and you would say, look, these are the most important things that we got in these couple of days.
Yes, I was just thinking out loud because he asked me to help like about an hour ago, so I have no plan. A fun exercise sometimes we've done at the other Leading for Wellbeing is to try to just finish the sentence. You know, you're telling your kid or your mother or whomever, I went to this great meeting that, and then ... that was about, or that did whatever, where I learned ABC, you know, just that basic. Like, how would you describe this? Because I'm thinking about that, just telling my wife and even my kids, you know, why was Daddy away for 3 days and what was he doing? So I don't know if that's a helpful framework, but just to try to fill that out in your head.
I think perhaps just doing it at that level is fine. So don't worry again about my instruction about integration. Okay, I think I'm going to get there. But to begin with, I think let's do what Andrew was saying, which is, I went away for 3 days, and what was it, Andrew?
I went to this great, I'm assuming it's great. You could say I went to this horrible meeting, but I mean, I'd like to start with a positive. I went to this great meeting that, and you can fill that out any way you want, and that was about X, Y, Z. Like, how would you describe what this was about?
Okay.
And then I learned A or ABC.
So could you take
and don't mention the food or the drink.
I'm going to do.
Yeah, that's a good addition.
Yes.
And I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to.
Right. But just take 5 to 8 minutes. And by the way, we want to do this as a big conversation. Okay. So we thought about splitting people off into small groups and coming back, but let's just try to do this in a big dialogue so we all hear each other. Okay. Okay. I see several of you putting down your pens. Others are probably still developing. So please continue adding your thoughts. So really, 2 things we're going to try to work on right now. One is just what came to your mind as we asked you that question about what would you say to somebody? And yes, go ahead, Brady.
My thought was, just as a tentative suggestion, how about something like the purpose was to unify business and economic thinking with spiritual and philosophical thinking.
It's like a metaphor in that business is like the body. So there are leaders like the brain or the liver that have a function, but they're still leaders. But beyond those leaders who leading needs, there's this connectedness and an empathy that the body has to have with the surrounding. And that body has to act in a full coherence. Internally and with the environment, and a full connectedness. And as anybody, the organization will be attacked by viruses and bacteria, and the body will have to see how to deal with it, but always with a change in the way of attacking that viruses and bacteria, and going beyond economic thinking and more with a social impact.
So like a biological model,
Yeah.
how to think about businesses. Okay? Analogy to the body, connectedness, empathy, to get coherence both inside and external to the environment.
Just next to Gabriel.
I'm sorry.
Maybe, we didn't talk about that, but, I had an image when you proposed this, and I had the image of what we heard about health. It was sort of inoculating into the body, health information, so that the body can pick it up. And so for me, at the moment, the image came like we are learning, we are inspired by the idea that all of us can go back to put health information into whatever system we're talking about, because it's an inside and an outside activity. Whatever I do inside to reflect outside, and the other way around. So this consciousness field, I say field, but with its connectedness, is going to take over in a way that, whatever I do is going to connect to the community. So I saw it like that in a way, that we have gathered health information from different perspectives and different agents to put it into our system, and from our system put it outside again, and thus interact and let it grow.
It's beautiful. So you're looking at Yava's idea that to cure or to stop disease or degeneration, we need the full code of life, the healthy information of a healthy life. You have to put that back into the organism. And you're saying we could use that for any system, and that consciousness can be a way to do that. Yeah? Sorry.
Two thoughts. One is the power of learning from different disciplines and making coherent different areas of knowledge that which everyone has some expertise. So integrating all that knowledge, I think, is very powerful. So that's one idea.
How would you distinguish that? I just want to probe a little bit. How would you distinguish integrating knowledge across disciplines, which is something that academia and business even and the sciences have all been thinking about for a very long time? What is it that we did differently here? There's something about the type of integration, or is there something about the type of integration we were doing here, which is different than the usual, let's be more cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary? What would you say it is?
Like for me, it was like this meeting was very different compared to other professional meetings or conferences I have attended. Like, so even though those conferences are very eclectic and from people from different disciplines, like there is something that prevail. Like, I'm not sure if the whole paradigm or if you are focused on one specific thing. So, for example, I went the last week to a management conference, and I learned a lot, but from within the discipline of management, from this different perspective. But here, I learned from people that were coming from the quantum physicists, theorists, lobbying, network science. So those type of knowledge was new for me. So I learned to develop new alternatives for the work that I do. And that didn't happen for me in previous type of meetings. So I developed in those cases I developed new ideas, but in the same domain.
This is really new thinking. So
yes, it's
integrating knowledge to come up with really new thinking. And the centerpiece of this new thinking, can we say that the centerpiece of this new thinking is connectedness and coherence? Or should we say, how would you say it in a broader way? Consciousness?
Wholeness, nonlocal.
Wholeness, yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is that there was a wholeness about wholeness as a common purpose. Right? So we were all here. What struck me here is that people come from different walks of life, literally different disciplines, different ways of thinking about life. They actually, there was an incredible unity in the purpose that brings us here, in the way of thinking about reality, informed, updated, obviously, by scientists, physicists, neuroscientists, and so on. There was an incredible wholeness, unity in that.
There's a unity in thinking about unity.
In thinking about unity,
right?
And if I can repeat,
Yes,
please. So the next thing that I would bring home and tell my daughter, I guess, because my wife is here, is the complementarity that was a lot stronger than I expected among the various competences and networks, both human and social capital that was present here. But it was potential. It gave the impression of a huge potential that is yet almost completely unrealized, right? We have, I'm going to go away with this notion of, this idea of something potentially enormous that could be generated. But the work to actually generate it, to move it from potential to actual is equally large, obviously.
Can you say a little bit more about that? What would that look like? To take it from potential to, into practice, into...
Would mean that imagine all the networks that we either represent or are parts of, the networks that we're connected that are not represented here, starting to work together. The Michael example is one, but there are many others that are aligned or potentially can be aligned on the same vision, ignited by the same power of energy. But the moment they start actually really working together, one thing is to talk.
Consciously articulating it.
Well, articulating and then translating into change.
Into change.
That is the big question, right? That's what I was talking about before. We need, laboratories. We need actual change mechanisms, academies, ways to engage and act with.
And Michael, that's a little bit what we're trying to do, right? In the leading well-being is to actually get mechanisms in place to translate what we heard of it. Yes.
Someone mentioned the idea of the soul. What is the soul? The soul is a Greek idea, and that basically it's an organizing principle. It draws and organizes the system together. It's indigenous to Greek thought and Greek Christian thought. There's really, despite whatever you hear, there's nothing comparable in Eastern thought to the Western. So, now, to shift this a little, I've talked to quite a few people in my, in my position and with my interests who are trying to bring consciousness to bear on a lot of different things: ecology, business, philosophy, physics, and of course we're hearing all that here, and we're interested in what I would call a transdisciplinary approach rather than a cross-disciplinary. A transdisciplinary approach is a little different because you might draw your method from one discipline to the content from another. But the point I want to make, and I don't really have a defense of it to argue for it, but as I talk to more and more people, they bring the concept of consciousness in as an organizing principle, just like guiding the soul. Say, oh, we're going to do it with consciousness. They have different ideas of consciousness. Usually they mean more aware, more balanced, more holistic. But you put that word consciousness in there in a business proposition or a philosophical proposition, it begins to organize things in a direction I think that's we would all agree is positive, although it's like quality in the wonderful Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. You can't define it, but you know what it is. Well, part of the reason I suggest this is I don't think it depends on anything. As soon as you start talking about non-dual, now we're talking about Buddhism, we're talking about metaphysics, talking about parapsychology, all of which are valid. But no, when I was just in Paris with some of the old Andrew Cohen people. They've started their own business now, consulting business. And they help businesses, corporations become more conscious. I said, well, what does that mean, conscious? And then they begin to talk about ecology, holism. I think if you press them to the wall, they individually think there's something about non-dual. No, they just mean a holistic world in which we're, they said we're aware of the various parameters involved. Are we doing good work? Are the workers satisfied and burgeoning in their own lives? What kind of ethics are in this thing? I mean, you can take some simplistic model like Ken Wilber's all quadrants, and you can just walk through them. And what are you doing at each? And what are you doing for the social side? What are you doing for the environment? What are you doing for people? And what I hear people doing who are not professional philosophers or who are not invested as a, they're all, I just wrote an article on meanings of consciousness. There are many, many of them. In fact, probably 75 or 100 at least in the English language alone. But when people put that stamp on it, they mean this is going to be something that involves awareness, involves costly values, involves, but it's not going to be about fragmented dog-eat-dog kind of thinking. So anyway, I just throw that out, that the word consciousness is,
I'm just curious,
don't worry over it too much.
But as we talk about consciousness as I think one of the thematic ideas that you talk about connecting everything we talk about consciousness is not the same as conscience. I mean,
Except in French.
Yeah. But what I mean is I feel like there's always this leap that if we're more conscious, it necessarily means more ethical or better. You can very consciously, Philip Morris could be very consciously in the moment selling cigarettes to people very aggressively, and you have a mission in business.
Yeah, they
actually
do that, but they can't do that in the four quadrants. You can't do that in a holistic way.
Yes, that's
You have to quit thinking about the medical and so on.
If you don't use a specific framework, like Wilber's framework, I think in the popular imagination, there's still confusion between the word conscious and consciousness.
Well, Urban's given us a wonderful, model just from systems theory to build it out. Anyway, I don't want to be argumentative.
No, I'm only scribing. I'm only scribing, but I want to make sure that I capture whether we were talking about consciousness
Everything we've talked about
as an underlying connecting feature of reality, or are we talking about being conscious like I'm more aware, or I'm more focused, or being mindful? Which is it?
No, it's the first. The first.
It's the first.
I think
So I think we need to make that distinction, because you know what? One of the problems I have with this rapidly growing movement called conscious business,
conscious capital.
or conscious capitalism, is that conscious capitalism is a little bit in the sense you were saying, Leslie, which is, some people interpret it as meaning business should be more aware of what's going on, they need to be more mindful and so on. And Fred Tsao and I have talked about the fact that consciousness capitalism would be quite different. Consciousness capitalism is built on an understanding that we are all one, and that we are connected by information and energy, and that who we are, it's all through a area of work. But it's that second definition, and I just want to be clear about it. Anne-Marie has had her hand up for a while.
Yeah, I think that the fact that we all come with that intention and understanding in some forms, and that we also have the capacity to really open our heart, is what is bringing us also in this co-creative space, and the field being held also by all the work that Urban's been doing and others around it, that we all bring from that intention is very, very important. And the potential that you were pointing out to, I think, also has a kind of catalytic, energizing force to continue and to feel this energy in ourselves that even opens up our co-creative energy even more.
Right, so as an organizing principle, it's the idea that if we tap into this form of consciousness, if we tune into it, we experience life. It opens our heart up, it opens our creativity up, but it also makes us see others as part of who we are. You are the rest of who I am.
Yeah, and that, if I can just add one thing,
Okay.
which I feel is essential in the field of spiral dynamics, people also the first to the second tier is the shift that through the heart we go from fear-based to freedom or to freedom-based.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you were also pointing out, and I think that's the capacity and the potential that we're also, we don't need sometimes for that, but that's, and that you are pointing out to Chris in your opening, what I picked up with also, and that is also scientifically proven that our brains, consciousness then has the capacity to hold much more complexity and see opportunities and potential.
Right. Yes, thank you for bringing that in. Yes, Roy.
I've got 4 things that I am planning to go home and tell my wife, my clients, members of our company. Do you want them just all, or download the whole thing? I first want to say that if I think about us in Irwin's first categories as thinkers and doers, and I'm thinking about Gareth's very provocative first question of what if we discovered tomorrow there was incontrovertible evidence that consciousness was not non-local. I think the thinkers among us would have their heads explode, and the doers, if I try to straddle both lines, the thinking part of me in my head would explode and go, well, crap, now what? But the doing part of me that's encountering whatever's happening in real life, however it's explained, would stay on its course. And because there is something compelling about empirical experience. And I can live with that even when I don't understand it. And I really am taken by, say, Needleman's phrase about the unseen forces that shape our lives,
So
which we cannot understand but can serve.
That staying on course is towards a relational, connected, coherent way of being.
Well, here's the way I put it.
Okay.
I wouldn't use those words to my wife.
Go ahead.
Okay, to my wife, to my clients. I would say this. I got 4 points. I would say we're at a critical point in human history in which 2 things are emerging. Huge, potentially fatal problems, and the evidence of solutions that can save us. That'd be point 1. Point 2 would be, there appears to be solid scientific evidence that all of us actually are one. Not just a theory, but fact. We actually are one. And that the awareness of this oneness, the awareness, the consciousness, that can actually change a mindset and therefore behavior that leads to sustainable. I'm sorry, going too fast?
No, is that point 2 or 3? And the awareness.
Point 2, there is scientific evidence
That they're all one.
of one, that we're all one.
Right.
Number 2, under scientific evidence, is 2B,
Okay.
is the awareness of that. Is that awareness in mindset changes mindset and behavior, that awareness is something that arises spontaneously as we live at home and at work. That's one of the things I've gotten. That'd be point 2. Point 3 is that scientific evidence. There is empirical evidence in businesses, communities, governments, that A, things are changing. B, there are practices that we can undertake individually and together at work and at home and in communities that will open us to this shift in awareness that's out there going bing, bing, bing. 3C, that it only takes 10%
That's really
of
cheating,
us.
you know. I said yes, and I was right now.
That's how I went from 12 minutes to 20.
I know. Now I'm writing 20 things.
3C, it only takes 10% of us to tune in.
Okay, 3C1, that 10% is right.
For change, just for the other 90% to start falling in. 3D.
Yes.
No, seriously, is there a D?
3D. Is there a 3D?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's 4D, but is there a 3D? Yeah. Go ahead.
3D.
Is there more than D?
Stefan's point that pursuing goals that have at their heart well-being, nonviolence, actually are proven to have a greater chance of success and endurance.
And to be cheaper and more efficient.
Here, here. And final point, you don't have to wait any longer to, one, identify. Sorry. it's the way
Do you
it
write
works.
insurance policies?
You wanted something that was simple and would speak to normal speaking folks, right? It takes a few sentences, at least for me. You don't have to wait any longer to identify what you most deeply want for yourself or your world. To find like-minded people and undertake action. Because you can trust that the unseen forces are going to get underneath you and draw others to you. Last point under that. And in so doing, you can proudly take your place as having played a part in creating an inheritable world for our children and future generations.
So you have now elected yourself tomorrow to summarize.
Yeah.
And as we develop, I guess, the summaries for tomorrow, I think we're going to need some volunteers.
That's true.
Yes.
I'll volunteer.
Actually, I promised Maria.
No, perfect.
Maria.
Okay. I would say that the challenges that we have are to create alternative ways and concepts for competitiveness and ownership. And that leads us, the images that from interconnectedness come to me are the multi-actors networks that work for shared goals. And that is not only designing organizations with new cultures of management, but also organizations co-designing urban systems, ecosystems, in joint adventures and joint actions. And I think that's a real challenge for our culture, to drift away from competitiveness, and that involves creating new models of collaborations for business of the same sector. Some of examples you have already given. The other thing that I would like to, and owners, there are all like different models of ownership. I am aware of the employees' ownership initiatives, of the clients' ownership initiatives, and I think we need to talk about ownership. About the interdisciplinarity, I would like to say that what I consider marvelous from this meeting is the inspirational dialogue between disciplines, and that we together are co-creating new images for our cultures. I would like to drive away from putting on the pedestal the physical sciences and medical sciences, and then have social sciences being like the small sisters or brothers that say because we have this area in the brain, or because then we are justified to function in this way. I think I personally need to listen. I mean, what I have been listening has been so inspiring and so rich for me. And I would like to have here also economists and social scientists that share their experiences, and that then we can create new metaphors for humanity. I heard Betsy seizing to the effort of creating new narratives for humanity that include diversity and at the same time are connected. That is what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Stefan.
Well, if I were going to go home and tell my wife, who happens to be here, so she's now already figured out what her own views are. Speaking as a person who does trend analysis, I would say what I learned at this conference is that at a moment of almost catastrophic species endangerment, that there is emerging from all over the country, Asia, Europe, United States are all represented here, a counter-movement which is recognizing and awakening to the potential of a new view of interconnected and interdependent potential for well-being, and that in a wide spectrum of ways people are actively working on it, and that I find extraordinarily encouraging. Just the fact that all these people are sitting in this room, in this little bitty Italian village, because you and your father invited us, and that we have spent 3 days describing and talking about ways of creating well-being, I think is quite amazing, because it is a counterforce to the dominant paradigm that is taking us into catastrophe. So I think we should be very heartened in going away from this, recognizing, A, that we're not alone. I mean, I sit on my island in Whidbey, and I'm very glad to know that Fred's out there, and Andrew's out there, and Joe's out there, and Andrew's there, and that there are other people who not only see what I see, but who are actively doing things that are remediationally oriented to a well-being that my children and grandchildren can enjoy.
You know, can I just add one point from a business sector perspective? I think that last word that Stefan used is critical. Remediation. We've also talked about regenerative, restorative, well-being. These are new words in at least the world of business and enterprise of all kinds, because as you saw even from Andrew's presentation, even most of the leading Fortune 500s are still worried about reducing their footprint, reducing harm. But to think about being a force for good means now that there's a new purpose of business, which is really to try to bring us back into a healthier, vibrant world that works for all.
What is
Remediation. To remediate means to put back, to mediate it back into a healthy state.
It's used in the technical context by like a Superfund site or a toxic site that or after a mine has been done, that you put it back, and that's the really technical term. You're talking about like remediating the climate, or you know.
Well, the Earth is a Superfund site that needs to be remediated. Sorry, you had your hand up before you go.
So I have a sentence.
Okay. In Italian? Spanish?
No, in English. We are really manifesting consciousness, and giving our message to others. That means ourselves through networks of business. 100%.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So we are manifesting consciousness and giving.
Yes, and giving our message to others.
Yeah.
That means ourselves.
Yeah.
Through networks of businesses. 100% sustainable. And designed as systems creates more abundance and human care.
So you know what we just here. We have to. Can we just put it on this? So I have some. Yes?
100% sustainable and designed as systems creates more abundance and human care than business as usual.
Perfect. Thank you. I think Eddie, you have your hand up. I'm trying to take people in order. They're not coming to you. Eddie, okay.
I'm neither a researcher, a philosopher, or a businessman. I'm sort of an end-user consumer at this point in my life. But I have worked for, thank God, only a short period of time in my life for a number of companies. And what I would go home and tell my daughter is that part of what's encouraging for me and was discouraging working for large companies was that even though intuitively I knew a lot of what you were saying would improve their business, they needed some kind of bottom line proof, i.e. numbers, if you will, data. And so I'm encouraged that what I've heard today in terms of academia researching this subject is that they seem to be coming up with really hard numbers, if you will, that could, in fact, not necessarily shift someone in their consciousness, but at least prove to them that their business model could be more profitable if they went in this direction, even if they didn't understand what that direction really was. So I share Stephanie's sense of optimism.
Thank you, Eddie, for that. And if I could just suggest for the group that in fact what Eddie is seeing is that hard evidence is growing, in fact, for two things. One, that the business case for sustainability is becoming incontrovertible. I mean, we saw already today many cases where large studies show that companies that pursue health, environmental, social, governance, performance outperform their peers. And investors show it, like the Eccles study, like a Sisodius study that was shown. But there's another category of evidence that's hard evidence that's also growing, and that's coming from the natural sciences. That, in other words, from physics, the new biology, and consciousness research, we're getting hard evidence to suggest that information and energy are the fundamental building blocks of the universe, and that's what connects us all. Does everybody agree with that? Or is there anybody here that doesn't see that hard evidence growing for understanding reality now as information and energy that connects and unites us? Okay?
For example, you have said that information and energy is like an inherent part of the reality that will trigger a new set of interesting questions for social sciences, for example.
Yes.
So what it means to make corporate change if you accept the fact that reality is based on information and energy. So would you still be working on changing the narratives, or you need to be deeper in terms of changing the energy and the frequencies that support the organizational system? And how do you do that?
Is Giles here? Yeah. Giles. You remember Giles' slide at the very end, the iceberg? So basically in business, when you go to work at the level of strategy and operations, or organizational behavior even, but when you go further and further down, the greatest point of leverage is below values, beliefs, and then what was the bottom one? Consciousness. Worldview. So yes, it would change the way social scientists would go about thinking about studying organizational effectiveness. Instead of operating at a superficial level, instead of business strategists just thinking about in Michael Porter terms, generic strategies about positioning or industry forces, we start going below that. We start thinking about the culture, the values, the beliefs, and then ultimately what are the mindsets. And Peter Senge, notice, has been suggesting that for a long time. Okay, they still have about the hands, but you had 5 in your head already, so I'm coming back to you.
I was just scratching my head.
I saw the 5. Okay, go, Joe.
Yeah, just 3 sentences, Chris, and really it's only the last one you need captured.
What's that?
It's 3 sentences, but it's only the last sentence captured.
These are 3 sentences, but did he have subparts?
Yeah, no. No, based on Andrew's suggestion. Why we came together, what we learned, and what we can take away, and the takeaway is the key one. We came together because we all recognise that our planet is at a critical tipping point, and that old ways of doing things are no longer appropriate, valid, or sustainable.
Okay.
So what did we learn? We learned that we are not isolated individuals, but one connected universal cooperative. And we must use our combined creativity and wisdom to solve the most pressing problems facing our planet and our species.
Okay.
And the key takeaway message, certainly for me, is this. If we want to pass on a sustainable world to future generations, then we have to start using the wisdom of our collective connectedness with immediate effect. The wisdom of us as a collective is greater than us as an individual. But it's not just collective wisdom which you can have, it's the connectedness of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, sorry. You're first.
What I was going to say is building on what two other people said, and that's about, if I put it in a nutshell, is that I thought, well, what I'm going to take back also for my kids or for future generations. And so very often when we talk about this crisis, it's sort of like a negative group, and so you sort of have to push up all your energy in order to put forward a better vision on that. So I think we got a lot of hard facts or evidences about how to tap into our positive way of thinking, talking about positive psychology that grows your mind, that taps into your creativity, that grows your own potential. From different disciplines, which I thought was so enriching, so many different possibilities. So no matter where you come from, no matter where your passion is, no matter what your purpose is, all of us can connect to that. And when we connect to that, I'm sure we are at 10% of some number. So if each one of us takes this mission back of potentially this 10%, so I think we are also responsible for whatever change we can produce in a shift, not only in consciousness, but also in positive way of contributing to society and well-being in general.
Yeah. So this looking at the world, not just in terms of problems to be fixed, but as strengths and as things to appreciate in others and in systems. We know that changes us. We talked about that on the first day, neurophysiologically, and that happens to be very related to being able to see the world in different perspectives. Yes, let's just take a few more. We're going to just take a few more, and then, boss, what are we doing?
Well, I was just wondering if there would be some, because we've been talking about how did the earlier talks affect the thinking about business. I also would be interested in reversing that a little bit, hearing from the physics and quantum folks about does the discussion of what's going on in business have any influence?
You turn your back so you don't have he will also have the same. So.
He's saying he's turning his back on his father.
But I am not.
No, that's completely unintentional. I'm sorry about that. I'm just writing that here, so I can't write this way.
I'm writing this
But actually, his thought about, so what Andrew was proposing was that we would like to hear how philosophy, physics, and the natural sciences and conscious research were affected by hearing about business. So in fact, this is where I would turn to you guys.
That's exactly what we want to do.
Okay, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. What were we doing?
Well, that doesn't have to happen now, but that was a reverse thought. We do that now, but then we need to get to, I think, tomorrow, a summary of the full, maybe a 4 areas or some quick, couple bullets on the floor.
Okay, so we'll just take a few more points. I want to go to Fred. Fred, you had a few things. What are your big takeaways from this event?
Possibilities.
Okay.
Possibilities. I came here with an intent. Since I'm one of the organizers, I'm looking at possibilities. And the intent is that how do we take this quantum new paradigm, more deeply understand, and bring that new world view into business so we can have flourishing, connectivity, shift beyond the ontological threshold, creating new mimes in the spirals to move into the coral. Actually, I know the coral word is. He's not Chinese, otherwise he would know what coral is. Anyway, possibility. In my mind, I see a Lego sheet which we are creating, and many Lego blocks. And here I found, wow, some of the Lego blocks are not Lego blocks, are chunks of Lego blocks already built. Others are Lego blocks I can see can put in and connect with this Lego block. And we're going to play Lego City over the next few years.
And build.
And then build this Lego City model. And then people look at it and say, wow, I get it. And I see already many integrations going on, many initiatives, many framing, many network, from a big one of how does this whole framing of our biochemical, electrical, photon movement to consciousness, to what is consciousness, to how to sell with mindful focus and teaching little tricks on how you eliminate your brain chat by focusing on your breath into focusing on selling. All these models are relevant to build this Lego City. But what I am surprised is we need to build a bigger Lego sheet to accommodate all these blocks, which is our job. For the tripartite center to make the sheet big enough to build this Lego City of the future.
Which is going to lead to personal well-being, organizational well-being, and world well-being aligned.
Totally aligned. Because relationship is holistic. It's not separable, your relationship. Your relationship, yourself, your relationship, your family, relationship with the, I like that big heart thing, the egocentric. Actually, you're just you. You're completely you. If you have no congruency, you have no wellness. And so when you're doing business, that's related with the business, or your own business, whatever that business is one. And that congruency, and that integrity, and that freedom is wellness.
Wellness, oneness at all levels.
Yeah, because why you're not free? Confused and conflicted. If you're totally congruent, you're free from resistance. You're free from yourself. Of all the confusion and confliction.
Yeah.
So, therefore, big Lego City, and as long as we can start taking stock and designing which tripartite center we're looking, and see how all these Lego blocks can gradually come into this Lego City, and which block should go where. And that's my takeaway. I said to my kid, hey man, Dad is going to build a huge Lego City toy with a lot of people playing it. And you know what? I'm one of the blocks inside too.
Well, we've got work to do. Did you have overall takeaways, or do you want to talk about what you saw from the business presentations?
What I saw in business presentation mostly, because of course I agree with what all the scientists said, although our friend objected that maybe it would be the same if non-locality was a pure dream and it doesn't exist, although there are many evidences that it does. But he is right. I think if we don't do anything, as Stefan said, we are all going to die. So non-locality or locality, the matter is the same. Urgency is the same.
So, that's a very interesting point. Andrew and I have discussed the fact that we don't have to talk about climate change, even though we should, because it's such a proven reality, but it's a politically sensitive topic in many Western markets. But you know what? You don't have to believe in climate change to decarbonize your supply chains, because it makes economic sense.
Yeah.
When you get off fossil fuels, when we look at alternative clean energy that's available today, the market pushes you to do that, whether or not you believe in climate change. And I think it's a little bit the same story here. You know, non-local consciousness is a great story, and I think we want to put that into this business book because we want people to start seeing alternative explanations about who we are as human beings as one way to understand why we need to act in a more connected way, in a more caring and compassionate way. But it doesn't depend on it because the world needs it.
It's more than that, you know, on the long term, if it proves to be true, it will manifest itself, you know.
Right.
This new reality that we are talking about is not just a subject of a conversation between nice people who meet together for a weekend, you know. It's true or it's false. I believe it's true. If it's true, it will manifest itself no matter what.
No.
But we can't wait. So the second part of what I had in mind was to comment on what I heard this morning, what I heard Mauricio said before leaving, what Fred said, also the big Lego stuff, and what I would like to propose is a methodology as in sketch a type of methodology with a Lego image for kids, you know. My idea is a little different. I agree with Mauricio that we should have universities and people, you know, like I've been absolutely amazed by the presentation, this morning's presentation. I was a little doubtful about the capability of, but I was really, I thank all the people who talked this morning. The level was really top. So I'm getting confident that something was possible. I'm just going to quote a few numbers. Stefan said 10% of any crowd, if they are activists, they can change the world. Okay. This is very important. Fred said that 75% of the business in the world is family business. I don't know. I know
there is a corporation.
No, but you know, I mean, it's very powerful. So we have the president of this organization with us. That means that we can dream of not teaching the big guys how to change, because it will take forever, you know. But do it ourselves. That means create corporations, create stuff. And we have models which already exist. I'm going to quote two models. One, by chance, was on the screen. I don't know whose presentation it was. I happen to know the founders of Natura in Brazil. I wouldn't say they are good friends because my friend was the CTO of Natura, and when they started the Natura in France, they invited me and I was introduced to the people. And I was shocked because these people really believe every word we say. But this has been running for 20 years. So it's not the blue sky, you know, it's reality. And they are worth today, I don't know, at that time they were worth $1 billion. They are probably worth 3 or 4 or 7, I don't know. But that means it's real business based exclusively on those values. And another example that I want to give is my partner in India. I'm working with him and with the WHO and stuff like this on trying to establish scientific grounds to Ayurvedic medicine. Okay? And then it will be accepted in the West, also in India, because Indian people now want real stuff which comes from the West. And the reward will be that we will get what they have and what Western medicine does not have, which is the holistic aspect and the influence of vital energy, spirit, all we have been talking about consciousness and all that stuff, in this real active system, which is worth, I wouldn't quote numbers because I don't know their value, but they are the largest telemedicine organization in the world. The business model is exactly our business model here. everything is free in terms of consulting. They just pay the bills. You know, it's a great model. It makes them rich, but they help people for free. And the very last thing, I have partners with a UNESCO organization, let's call it like that, working in complex systems. They say, now they gather 120 universities, but they say that one university is created every week in the world. And they are going to attract each university which is created is candidate to become a member of the organization. Maybe they will hit 50% only. So at the end they will end up being 3,000 universities, which may be able, if they agree with what we are saying here, they agree on some parts, maybe disagree on some other parts. So I wouldn't say that, but we can do the same. We can talk to the universities, and they are the guys who are going to build tomorrow's world. We can start, but they have to follow. So this is my strategy. It's not Lego, but it's not so different.
Stefan, Dad, did you want to say something?
I just want to speak up for non-local consciousness and its importance, because as I read the scientific research, non-local consciousness and the acceptance of this idea that all consciousness is interlinked and interdependent, not only will fundamentally alter the worldview that business and everything else is founded on, because everything we do culturally at this point is based on a dominionist model in which we live on the earth and have dominion over the earth, and we can exploit the earth in any way we want. That's the business model. That is, in fact, our cultural and social model, dominant model. We are not going to address the issues that face us. And I think we should be talking about climate change, not as an abstraction, but as a thing which is going to influence the lives of probably about 65% of the people in this room. Their lives in 30 years, and they will still be alive, are going to be radically and fundamentally changed as a result of it. But that you cannot come up with solutions to climate change until you realize that we live within a matrix of life. You have to think about it in a new way. You have to recognize that the interdependence and interconnectedness is not just humans, but is in fact every living being on the planet. And the policies that must develop in order to deal with the issues that climate change raises, and all of the subordinate issues like migration, which is destabilizing Europe right now, and this is just the beginning. I mean, 15 years from now, this is going to be nothing. Those issues must be addressed from the recognition that we live in a matrix of life. And if we don't recognize our interdependence and interconnectedness with that matrix of life, we will not make the right choices as to how we are going to address the catastrophe that is facing us. There is no other time in our lifetimes, no living person in this room, and I would include the Second World War, that affected many of them, decimated Europe. Nothing of the caliber that we are facing, not even the Second World War, will approach what we are going to confront unless we make changes. And those changes can only be properly understood with the recognition that all consciousness, from the smallest bacteria to the high-order mammals, is influenced by this interconnection and interdependence.
Gareth?
I remain genuinely agnostic as to the topic of whether consciousness is local or non-local, but I think we have to be very clear about terms here. Are we talking about consciousness or interconnectedness or being part of the same matrix? Because I completely agree, if we recognize that there is an inherent interconnectedness among all life, we then basically, addressing issues like global warming and the like follow from that. But I still see it as potentially see it as a bit of a non sequitur to say that we can only grapple with these issues universally in the way that we should, that can only follow from a recognition that consciousness is non-local. I mean, as I said in my presentation, as I alluded to my presentation, there are a good many working scientists and philosophers who don't accept this view. I mean, should we? Does it follow from that they don't have a dog in the hunt as far as?
I think we've just very well captured here what the challenge before us is. And if I could summarize, I think in a nutshell what we're speaking about is that there is compelling scientific evidence for the transmission theory of consciousness, for all life on Earth being connected, and that the underlying fabric, underlying even information and energy is consciousness. And I think we saw at least 3 or 4 of the top researchers in the world in this area provide, I think, very compelling evidence for that. I think what Gareth is saying to us is something we really have to keep in mind, which is that there is an enormous establishment out there, the scientific establishment, that is protecting their views, their worldview, and which is notoriously resistant to considering things that don't fit into an existing model. So I just want to say that while it may be true that there are other strategies and other tactics we could take to galvanize, to get us into action towards addressing these big global problems, the most likely and the biggest point of leverage we have is to transform our consciousness from one of separateness to one of connectedness. I think that's been the premise of this retreat, and there may be other ways to approach this, but I think this is a very powerful way to approach the challenge we have. I think Giles's visual presented it best. We could tackle this at the level of values. We could have invited Richard Barrett and his Values Institute people to tell us about the importance of values. We could have invited an organizational behaviorist to talk about the importance of psychology and of organizing principles of processes and so on. Or we could have invited strategists. But we know that the movement that business has made in the last 20 years based on rational analytic thinking has not been enough. It's not moving us fast enough, far enough to address these problems. And so the one best hope we have now to really shift the business community fast and far is to change people at that deepest level of how they see who they are. So if they see who they are as... Now, I'm frankly not even interested in the debate on whether there's some scientific article that shows that non-locality isn't true or is. And that rebuttal is less interesting to me than building the Lego city that Fred is talking about, that's going to be compelling to people so that when they think about behaving in the world in a way that cares for others, that shows compassion for others, that pursues greater purpose, and that pursues well-being.
A couple of things on the first point, what I've taken away. One is the power of coherent intent, which Stefan was talking about.
Power of what?
Coherent intent. Coherent intention, or intention, if you like. And that's something that is well worth reflecting on, just in terms of how one actually externalizes or manifests anything in the world. It starts with thought. Coherent thought is more powerful than non-coherent thought, and people having coherent thought together is even more powerful. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the phrase practices of connectedness. And that struck a chord for me. And I realized that, the panurhythmy is exactly that. It's exactly a practice of connectedness. Mm-hmm. Connectedness with each other, connectedness with the earth, and connectedness with the invisible forces.
What did you say? What is that?
Threefold connectedness.
Yeah.
Panurhythmy. Panurhythmy, the sacred dance from Bulgaria. And then I just wanted to feed into this question of how tomorrow might be structured, because I don't know how many people we're expecting, but I think it would be interesting to frame our morning, not just in terms of a kind of information download or upload, depending on which way you're going, but or information transfer. But try and situate, maybe ask people some questions, but situate where they are on the spectrum of feeling separate or connected, and what in their life are they currently doing that gives them a sense of connectedness, and what might they do? You might ask people that at the end. What might they do now they've attended the symposium that would give them a further sense of connectedness? And when you say a sense of connectedness, you might get people to just chat in small groups at the beginning. You know, what does that actually mean? What does that mean to me in my life now?
What's it feel like?
Yeah, what does it feel like? What are the, it's related to the practices, and I go for walking in the morning, and so just to sort of really bring it down into people's lives.
Yes.
And then people could ask the same question at the end of the symposium, and get a sense of whether what we've said has enabled them to move in that direction that we're postulating, of greater sense of connectedness.
Okay.
And that there may be, and I suppose what we're doing, or what we could do tomorrow, is to reframe people's understanding of connectedness. So we hope they'll arrive with a sense that they already have, and of course we will be part of that because we will have a sense ourselves. And then we hope that they'll move along in their journey towards something, a greater sense of this. And then we could ask people to make a little resolution right at the end, to do something which enhances the sense of connectedness, and then maybe have a sort of blog area on the Laszlo Institute website that people could feed in a week's time or 2 days' time or a month's time, what their ongoing journey is in this sense.
That's great. That's a great suggestion. I love the idea of engaging people tomorrow in something active, so we're not just telling them summaries, but also, he had his hand up. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to sort of feedback or build on this tomorrow, what could be done. And I think, Stefan, you were sharing something before in the break, which I thought was quite cunning when you said that the people in the island that you live on, they sort of took on agency and responsibility in a way to increase their well-being, focusing on the things that they can do in their community, so that it's really a practice of connectedness by creating and co-creating solutions together to issues that they're real for them, not like the theory of quantum physics or some sort. But if that is a way that there can be space for that, and maybe Stefan can talk more of how that worked.
Yeah. So I'm just noticing the time. We only have a short amount of time left, and would you be up for closing this or sharing your thoughts?
By no means at all, just share. Why did we do this? Why did we sit us here together? In my mind, it's an experiment. We have a belief that if we understand better of the way this world is and who we are, then we will behave better. With better chances of survival. Yeah, and that's very critical moment which Stefan and the rest were talking about. I don't think, as Andrew asked, it's very relevant to know what management scientists and practitioners are thinking about these issues. But this knowledge that you are thinking about the same way is an encouragement. If you think about it differently, it would be a reason for us to go back and say, who is you? it does not change one's understanding of reality to know that somebody else thinks about the same way or similar way. On the other hand, there is a tremendously important confirmation of the idea of this kind of a new interconnected, spontaneously spreading reality, which is that it spreads. That if you get onto one wavelength which works, then other people can join, and together you can do. So this is this experiment for me, this attempt to, for 3 days, have a retreat looking at the new metal reality, I'd call it, a new concept of what there is and who we are. How that comes out by exposing a couple of leading lights, luminaries of this kind of thinking to a couple of leading business people, practitioners. And what comes out of this meeting? Where is the light going on? To my mind, it is a self-confirming outcome. Because if it truly is the case that this new reality is interconnected, is whole, and it's evolving, then I think at a moment when we are at a critical juncture of our history, there are more and more people who discover it. If we wouldn't discover it, we would not be a viable species. Then we would pull down the drain with good reason. But the fact that we are discovering it is an indication to my mind that we have a chance to survive on this planet. Just one last thought. You think about these things as new. No, they ain't new. They're very old. What we're doing is not discovering anything. We are rediscovering something that the greatest majority of humanity over the 99.9% of our history as a conscious species have known. There has been an aberration in the last 150 years, which was based on a mistaken conception of Newton and of Darwin and of their followers. And this aberration brought us to a critical point. And the sense of oneness is something that people always had. And it's when we rediscover it, then it really is an experience. It's an aha experience. It's finally, we know what subconsciously, because of our heritage, of our previous lives, of our experience over centuries and millennia on this planet, and gathered, we are finally come back to it through the lens, through a new lens which is given unprecedented credibility in society, which we call science. Sure, not the mainstream science, but the leading-edge science. And if that is really the case, then this gives us one little additional push, the push of credibility, the push to believe that yes, this is not absolutely true, but it may be true. And if it may be true, it may be worth trying out. Because the alternative of going with the old way, with the old paradigm, is going into a dead end. So it comes at a crucial moment. Tomorrow you're going to summarize what happened. I'm telling you, give it time, because what is happening, and at the best of occasions, is that you begin to absorb this. You begin to think it, to live it, to breathe it, and this will take 24 hours, 48 hours, 2 months, 2 years. It will take some time. Maybe it's quite fast, but it's something that happens. When you meditate, it will come. These are the, I think, the really true elements of what we call, for lack of a better word, reality. It is interconnected. It is evolving. It does have a purpose. All of these things are there. We can articulate them. If you can articulate it, we have more reason to believe it with our left brain. But if it's the right brain, we know it's there. So allow it to surface. And allow it to spread. Help to spread. And summarize it in such a way tomorrow that other people can have it spread.